in formation not too far from here. Years ago, we used to have all-night vigils to Our Lady of Fatima on the first Saturday, and things would happen. Hundreds of people would come from all over Ireland, and in the depths of night we sensed that there was a maternal presence. We might, for instance, hold up candles and blessed handkerchiefs and wave them to her between the decades of the Rosary while walking outside in procession to the grotto. And she might answer back with a miraculous odour of roses. Other things would happen too, and there are stories that some still tell from those years before, alas, the monastery was closed and by now demolished. But the memories continue. Some years later, in the millennium, things came out with regard to all that had happened at Fatima originally. There was a buzz in the air when it was heard that the Vatican was making known the third secret. But it left people a little perplexed. One of our novices in the abbey that I was transferred to in Italy had to do with Antonio Socci. And Antonio Socci came into the news because of what he had written, initially to counteract the suspicion that there was something not yet made known. But as an honest and accurate journalist, he found that as he looked into the facts and pieced together the various parts of the puzzle, he was being conflicted and confronted with evidence to the contrary. There was actually more evidence than he had realized that there had been some kind of cover-up. And he went into all the corners of the question and published his findings. This provoked a reaction from the Vatican, and it made things actually quite uncomfortable for the Vatican, because it seems that he was unearthing the truth. It seems, therefore, that what he found was this. The person who was very close to John the 23rd, Doris Capovilla, eventually Archbishop, knew things. There is evidence right through that there was a message and not just a vision. The words of Our Lady already in 1952, Pius XII had sent a Jesuit, Father Schweigel, to interview Sister Lucy in her convent. He came back and made this known, that the third secret was in two parts. One concerned the Pope, and the other was the logical conclusion of the words in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc. Pius XII was aware that there was some kind of impending crisis of faith. Father Schweigel did say that evidently he could not make known the content of the secret, but all he could do was utter that much, that it was in two parts, the ones indicated. Pius XII became quite vocal about the danger of a suicide with regard to destruction of the liturgy. He foresaw that there would be something wrong, and he spoke out against it before it happened. The time would come when, like Mary Magdalene, Christians will look for the Lord, for the lamp of the sanctuary, and will not find it. They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have put him. Dismantling, therefore, of the tradition of the Church and replacing it with something human. The Lord no longer being honoured as he wanted. John the 23rd wanted to know where the third secret was, but already before he became Supreme Pontiff, there had been an interesting investigation of the papal apartment by a journalist of Paris Match, a Frenchman therefore. And Sister Pasqualina, the personal housekeeper and help of Pius XII right through, she had followed him from Munich, where she had helped him when he was there, did indicate to this journalist there, in that safe, is the third secret of Fatima. It was an antique, a venerable antique of files kept under lock and key, so venerable that it had a name, Barbarigo. And when, therefore, John the 23rd knew about it and wanted to see it, he asked where it was, and it was opened just before the time limit of 1960, when it was supposed to be opened. And when it came to 1960 itself, in February, 9th of February of that year, the Vatican made an announcement that the words of the Blessed Virgin will probably never be made public. It would seem that John the 23rd had opened it and been shocked by its content and had judged prudent not to make it known, arguing that the authenticity was not clear. That would make sense if the content was something about a crisis of faith, because it would go against what was about to happen, the launching of the Second Vatican Council. When Paul VI became Pope, he immediately wanted to know where it was, and it was indicated to him that it was there, and he opened it even before being enthroned as Pope. And he read it with interest. The envelope, therefore, was unsealed, and there are some signatures on its back with regard to who saw it and sealed it. Now, Archbishop Loris Capovilla was present at these events and bore witness later on. We know that both the bishop who had the immediate contact with the sealed envelope held it up to the light, and so did Cardinal Ottaviani, and they both could see that it was one sheet and it had between 20 and 25 lines of writing in it. John Paul II, hardly present in the papal apartment after his election, also wanted to know where it was and read it, and he did. And there are echoes of what he found in 1984 when he spoke to the German bishops at Fulda. A priest and also a secretary wrote down word for word what he was saying, and it does contain some alarming surprises. The hint was there. It was also there when Cardinal Ratzinger in the 80s gave an interview to the Jesus magazine run by the Jesuits, and it is also present in what he said to the ambassador to the Philippines, Howard D. He said to him, the message of Akita and the message of Fatima are the same. Therefore one can hear things in Akita which was approved and made known. Things about cardinal against cardinal and so on, bishop against bishop. That also can be heard at Garabandal. When it came to the Vatican having to listen to what Antonio Soccio was coming out with in his book, The Fourth Secret, they could only deflect attention and never really answered it head on. Because, as we know from Solideo Paolini, who talked with Archbishop Loris Capovilla, what actually happened was this. After the assassination attempt, John Paul II wanted to read what he hadn't read before and got from the archives of the Holy Office the text which was made known. But it's only a vision. And the question of the words of the Blessed Virgin, to which the Vatican announcement refers in February of 1960, are not there. There are no words. And when pressed, Archbishop Capovilla hinted that what had happened was that there were two envelopes, two texts. We know that Sister Lucy had had it very difficult to write the words. She couldn't bring herself to do it, but as she did, the vision. It was only pressed by obedience directly that she did write them. they were terrifying, obviously. And eventually, at the end of the conversation, Archbishop Capavilla answered Solideo Paolini, who was saying, does that mean that there are two envelopes? And he succinctly said, per l'appunto, precisely. But he had to be discreet about it. Now, Archbishop and then Cardinal Tarcisius Bertone came on main television around that time, porta a porta, and succeeded in showing that he couldn't address directly the issue by that very fact, ceding the point to Antonio Socci. He tried to lead the conversation in a different avenue, pulling wool over our eyes, but it didn't work, because in fact the Vatican could not deny what they knew to be the fact, that there was the message in the other envelope still there in the papal apartment. Probably the new Pope will be curious as well, and will want to know where it is and want to read it. He might actually make it known. With regard to its content, it is logical that it concerns at least this, as well as something regarding the Pope. There is something regarding that clause which was in the fourth memoir, which eventually the Vatican started to use, but in the third memoir it's not. But it's this bit that Lucy put in. In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc. By implication, one can deduce that in other parts of the world that might not necessarily be the case. There is also the question of the consecration to the Immaculate Heart, already present in the second secret, which was made known. In the early 30s, the hierarchy of Portugal together consecrated that country to the Immaculate Heart, and immediately there was an effect, an outburst of vocations and protection of Portugal from a communist takeover. Also protection from getting involved in the Spanish Civil War, and protection from getting involved in the Second World War. And it would seem that that was a hint of what Our Lady had intended, that it should be clearly seen that through a consecration to her Immaculate Heart there would be an intervention directly linked with that. When the whole world was brought to its knees in the COVID epidemic, Pope Francis did make a clear consecration, and eventually COVID did die down. But what is going to happen in Russia is not yet clear. We know that heaven is concerned about what is going on earth and what is going on in the church. We are living historic times. Heaven has given us a good Marian Pope, who is obviously a person of prayer and also of balance and of unity. We need to uphold him and not get into any kind of infighting. We need also to live the message of Fatima ourselves, and one element is that of the daily recitation of the Rosary, which she repeated. She always came out with that at each apparition. There is also, actually, curiously, a link between Fatima and Garabandal, for she did promise that she would come back as Our Lady of Mount Carmel. She had appeared as Our Lady of Mount Carmel to the children at one point. That's how she came back at Garabandal, with further warnings. It is said that because Garabandal was not listened to and pushed aside, she came back Medjugorje in a very dramatic series which is ongoing. If there are interventions of that nature in our time, which we have never seen before, it would mean that there's a reason for it, an urgency in the air. In the series of exorcisms in Germany in the 1970s, a lot of things came out. In the case of Anneliese Miguel, it would seem that many things which have become standard practice liturgically now were being pushed by sinister forces. It was very subtle. But all this is matter to be aware of, because it was one thing that Pius XII had an intuition of. There was going to be some kind of ecclesiastical suicide. We need to have, therefore, our eyes wide open as those of the Blessed Virgin herself, who from her place of glory looks down, weeps, and wants to help her wayward children. But we have ignored to some extent what specifically she asked. One of the things that hurt the children at Garabandal was the fact that they were told of the diminution of reverence for the Blessed Sacrament and the eventual loss of faith, division and confusion. In Latin it is said, "Is fecit cui prodest." He did it to whom it serves. O Most Holy Virgin, Immaculate in body and spirit, look kindly on me as I implore your powerful intercession. O Most Holy Mother, receive my prayers as I present them to God. O Mary, Mother of Jesus and our Mother, you intercede for us with your Son. O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee.